Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the Way Home Crossnore Communities for Children's Facebook Live show, as well as our podcast. My name is Holly Kessler, and I am the Senior Director of Community Relations at Crossnore. Every Tuesday afternoon, we're right here on Facebook Live, usually with some of our staff or a community partner, and we talk about the work that we do at Crossnore, our ways that we are engaging with our community. And so we're really glad that you are here with us. If you miss our live show, you can always watch it on our Facebook feed. We also have a YouTube channel where the show will go up after it airs live. And then on Fridays, the audio podcast comes out, and you can find that on our blog at crossnore.org. So there are lots of ways to watch us each week, and we're really glad that you're here. Today, our guest is Angela Woods, Crossnore's Chief Operating Officer. If you've been with us for other episodes, you will recognize Angela and hopefully will enjoy today's session. Angela is here to talk about coaching and how we can be coached or maybe even offer coaching to other folks to help them be successful. And I'm super excited about this conversation. So help me welcome Angela to the show today. Hello, Angela.
Hi, Holly. How you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
It's good. I'm glad to be talking about one of my favorite subjects.
I know. I can't wait for you to tell us about it. But for anybody who's new to the show, why don't we start with you introducing yourself and your role at Crossnore?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Angela Woods. I had the distinct pleasure of being the Chief Operating Officer for Crossnore Communities for Children. And what that means is I have direct responsibility and work with a great team from our HR team to our finance team to our facilities team to our IT team. I also have responsibility for risk management and kind of the legal support, and am the executive sponsor for our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts. So that's what I do, my day job.
That is a lot. You were right. You do have great teams. I have worked closely with several of your teams in the last few weeks around some events, and they have worked really hard to help us pull those events off. So we definitely appreciate that. But besides all of the things that you oversee here at Crossnore and the ways that you engage with us here, you also do a lot of things in your spare time. And I say spare time.
Spare. Right, exactly.
But one of those is around this idea of coaching. So tell us, what does coaching mean in general, or what does it mean to you specifically? I'm super interested to hear about this.
Sure. I mean, when you hear the term coaching, it's a broad term, but what it means for me in the context of my coaching practice and also how I support Crossnore in its efforts is that it is a partnership between the person who is a coach and the client, which can be a individual or it can be a team. And the client is the one that drives that interaction. And it's really about maximizing the client's potential. What they want in terms of their personal and professional goals, how do they maximize what they want to do and how they want to do it. But I think the most important thing is to know that it is about professional development and movement forward, not correction.
Yeah, I like that visual picture of moving forward. That's really cool. And have you been doing this for a long time, or is this something new that you've added to your repertoire?
Well, I like to think I've been doing it a long time, but it wasn't until I actually had the opportunity to be trained and licensed through the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, that what I was doing mostly was mentoring, but not necessarily coaching. Right? There's a big difference between coaching, mentoring, facilitating, therapy, all of those things. Coaching really is putting the client at the center of the interaction and what the client wants, not about what you think the client should do or to guide the client, but the client has you help the client help themselves, in other words, to figure out what direction they want to go. And I think for here at Crossnore, one of the things that I was talking to Brett about is I want to introduce another tool for our teams to use, because previously coaching has always been thought of in a lot of organizations, Crossnore is no different, as a corrective tool, that somebody something wrong. And
Yeah.
it's part of a performance improvement plan. But really, coaching is about what do you want to take from what you've learned and how do you want to develop yourself? And so
Mhm.
we're taking that space and really creating a client-centered or a team-centered approach to help folks maximize their potential.
And I guess I hadn't really thought about this difference until you said that.
Mhm.
Mentoring to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but mentoring to me seems a little bit more like I have some knowledge or I have some
Mhm.
expertise that you need to learn.
Right.
Versus, like you said, coaching is much more client or team centered. It's like it's more the question of what do you want to learn?
Absolutely. That makes the difference because mentoring is a guided experience,
Okay.
right? So if somebody typically approaches you, Holly, will you be my mentor? I know that you've got expertise in community relations and communications. I want to learn more about that.
Hmm.
As opposed to I'm kind of I want to just make some steps in my life or personal life or professional life, and
Hmm.
I need somebody to help me think that through.
Okay.
And that's more of a coaching piece.
Yeah.
So you're not really coming to this table with I have all the answers, and you're just sitting with me, and I'm going to tell you what's happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I also like that distinction you made around coaching, how we've used that sort of in
Mhm.
performance improvement
Mhm.
almost to make it sound better.
Right.
Like we know there's a problem. We don't really want to say that you've gotten in trouble. We're going to
Mhm.
coach you to do better, which is not a bad thing. I don't think necessarily, but the kind of coaching that you're talking about is really different than that. Like you said, more about moving forward
Mhm.
than sort of correcting behavior.
Yeah, and I think when you think about the whole entirety of performance improvement
Hmm.
plan, it's designed to be corrective. But really, what it should be about is if someone has not done something that you don't want them to do, then
Right.
it should be more of a forward focus of yes, let's address it, and what do we need to do to go forward? How do we improve
Hmm.
upon the situation, and what do you want for yourself? And
Hmm.
oftentimes in organizations, particularly on the HR front, when we talk about coaching, it is kind of like the one step before someone is out the door, right? As opposed to
Hmm.
turning that on its head and saying, yes, let's be accountable. And also, let's talk about what your goals are.
Hmm.
Not
Hmm.
necessarily the organization's goals, but what are your goals in
Yeah.
relation to mission?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about as you were talking about performance, thinking about early in my tenure with Crossnore, having an employee that was really struggling one day and did something that she was concerned about her own safety. And
Mm,
so she did what she felt like she needed to do to be safe.
mhm,
So, it wasn't that that was necessarily wrong. When I stopped to look at it, I thought, you know what? She did what we wanted her to do. We want our staff to be safe, right?
mhm.
She just didn't do it exactly in the way we needed her to do or that I wanted her to do. And so that was an interesting experience to sort of coach somebody to say, you got there, but let's talk about how you got there and how, maybe in the future that could be different.
Yeah.
That was really interesting to me because I think in other situations, in other organizations, what this staff person done might have been, a reason for them to be invited to leave their job. And
Right.
we wanted to find a way to salvage that relationship and to keep a good employee. And so we kind of worked through that, and it's a completely different way to look at
Yeah.
performance issues. Yeah,
Yeah. It's a glide path, right?
yeah,
Not necessarily a glide path backwards, but a glide path
yeah,
forwards, right? And so in the coaching world, there is sometimes people will hire you. Or organizations will hire you to do specific use coaching, where you're
hmm,
coaching a team to meet a specific goal, right? And so, but the kind of coaching that my preference is whole person coaching, where you're
hmm,
not only talking about what the client wants to talk about in goals, you're looking at all of the things that are influencing that client, whether it's health, whether it's environment, whether
hmm,
it's
hmm,
things that are happening on their job. They may want this or that, but you're looking at it from a holistic perspective.
hmm, hmm.
Two different modalities, both good, but just very different purposes.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Well, you mentioned the ICF, and so I was going to ask around certification or licensure. What is it that somebody needs to really call themselves a coach? I feel like there's a lot of people these days,
Oh, yeah.
calling themselves coaches. And so how can we be sure that we're getting somebody who has some training and who has some experience and ability to help us if we need a coach?
Sure. There are a lot of organizations that support and use this word loosely, regulate coaching, but the International Federation of Coaching is kind of the gold standard of coaching.
Okay.
It's very similar to what Crossnore goes through in terms of, having regulatory bodies, the audit process, credentialing, and usually it's well known whether you do it individually or if you're being hired by a company. They look for coaches who have various levels of credentialing. And so, for example, I'm a member of ICF, but I couldn't just join. I had to get trained and spend about 30 hours in specific professional coaching training.
Oh, wow.
And that meant that, we went through a course, then we had to do kind of one-on-one coaching. We had to take a test, and then you go to the next level and you get more experience. And then there's another level. So there's all sorts of level up to what's called the master's level of coaching,
Oh, wow.
which is a long way from where I am, but it requires 100 hours plus of coaching, plus mentoring coaching, plus testing, plus all of these things. And you are evaluated by coaches who have done this for a while, and they determine whether or not you get the kind of the highest level of accreditation. So what this does, I think, at least for me, it provides a path if I decide to go all the way to the various highest level, or you can practice at different credential levels. It gives you really good access to educational support, and it provides a great network of people who are all along the line, right? So if I need some access to a specific type of coaching, I can call up someone who's got this credential or that credential. So ICF really is I think kind of the gold standard of coaching.
And it sounds like it holds you to some accountability, to meeting some standards similar to our, as you said, as an organization, we have a sanctuary certification, we have a COA accreditation. So that holds us to a certain standard.
Yeah, absolutely. The ICF is built on core competencies and knowledge of these core competencies. For example, one of the foundational things as a coach, you have to demonstrate ethical practice. And what does that mean? That means that when I'm entering into a coaching relationship with you, that means we have an agreement. That means we've talked about the agreement, and we talked about your goals, my goals as a coach, what we want to accomplish together. That agreement is confidential. That the information that is shared stays between us, the coach and the client, that how you dispose of information, how you transfer records, all of those things. It also talks about how you engage the client in understanding and being open and bringing an inclusive lens to your interaction, and understanding where people are. And it also can be things like, when you're setting up a coaching environment, are people feeling safe to talk? Are they in a comfortable environment? Can you hear what they're saying? Do you need to make accommodations? And if so, how do you do that in a thoughtful and inclusive way? So that's just one of the things that we.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, you've touched on this a little bit briefly in what you've been saying, but what are some kind of common reasons, or maybe common forks in the road that people experience that would cause them to reach out for coaching?
So I've had the experience of people who saying, I want to do something different, but I don't know how to get there. And Angela, I heard that you have experience in health and wellness coaching, and I need to get my life together. This is just a hypothetical, right? And so then the conversation is, well, let's talk about that. What does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And then the conversation will kind of yield kind of what the person really wants and how we could potentially work together. And then it goes from there. And then there are also situations where, as we are, kind of embedding this within the Crossnore model, that there may be someone who says, hey, I have an employee or a teammate that could benefit from some coaching from a leadership development standpoint. And so, so then I get engaged that way through maybe HR. And so what I think is really important about that is I have to spend a lot of time just letting people know that this is not about correction. This is about opportunities to grow your leadership and making that distinction. So it can come at a bunch of different ways, depending on the environment.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And is coaching related at all to therapy? You have a lot of credentials, but I know you're not a therapist. So.
That's a fact. I am not a therapist, and do not play one on TV. What I like to think about coaching is part of a toolkit, right?
Right.
And so a lot of times when you are engaging in the process of coaching, because it is a process, a lot of things will come up for people. Feelings will come up, confidential things that around people, how they, things in their past. And so it's, as a coach, it's important to know your lane. And if there are things that come up that need expertise or further investigation, then it's the coach's responsibility to say, "Hey, listen, thank you for sharing that. You might want to reach out to a therapist, or you might want to reach out to a nutritionist, or you might want to reach out." And I look at these coaching as a part of an overall toolkit that people they pick up and use based on where they are, because it's very important for somebody who is not a therapist to try to play a therapist. That's not that, from an ethical standpoint, from a just credentialing standpoint, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's not a safe thing to do. So
correct.
Yeah. So speaking of staying in your lane, are there any sort of areas of specialty or topics that you particularly enjoy coaching, or that you find yourself doing a lot versus, maybe some other things that you don't have as much experience in?
So that's a great question. When I first decided to actually pursue coaching, a lot of former friends, not say former friends, teammates, and said, "Oh, you should have been doing this long ago." And so in my head, I was like, "Well, what do I know?" Well, I know leadership. I know what it's like being a woman, an African American leader, and all of that entails, and all that presents. And health and wellness is one of my passions. So let me just try to put all that together in coaching, right? Yeah. And so what is evolved from that is a leadership practice that embeds health and wellness for the individual. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that if you are looking to improve and maximize your leadership skills, that is not separate and apart from you being healthy and looking at a whole concept of well-being. So I've chosen to focus on the health and wellness leadership, linking those pieces together. And so sometimes, in coaching sessions, both here at Crossnore and externally, we'll spend some time on the wellness piece. Sometimes we'll just spend some time on the leadership piece. It just really depends on where the client wants to go.
Okay, that makes sense. And then from there, once you've sort of determined what the client what the client's needs are you looking for specific outcomes, or really, I guess, what constitutes success when you're coaching someone?
So here's the thing about coaching and mentoring and being a supervisor. All of that's determined by the client.
Okay.
And so it's not my goals.
Sure.
It's their goals. And so it's not my outcomes, it's their outcomes. And so what happens oftentimes, in my experience, is that it becomes a circular process sometimes. Sometimes it can be straight, but then we can go up and we can go back down, just depending where the client is, and then we can circle a little bit. And then when the client is ready to move forward, then we move forward, right? And so I've had scenarios where we've come to, a conclusion, or the client has come to a conclusion, but then something else comes up, and then we kind of go back through the process again. So I think the easy way to look at it is coaching is really a journey. Yeah. Typically I try to start with 6 weeks, but sometimes we go longer than that. It just really depends on the pace that the client wants and what they really want to accomplish. and the last thing I'll say about that is sometimes when clients have either come to me or been assigned to me, they have in their head, this is what I'm going to do. Right. I know she's not going to break me down. It's not going to happen. I've already know the answers. And so sometimes it takes a session or two to establish trust and to establish that this is about you, not about what I think. Because so it really is really client dependent. And this is a partnership.
It sounds like it. And I was going to ask you about the time frame. That's interesting to me that you say that on average, it's around 6 weeks. I think it feels to me a little bit like if it went longer than that, it'd be easy to sort of fall over into kind of therapy or, something like that. So that's interesting that you do sort of have a time frame.
And the time frame, I think, is a way, I think, to establish mutual accountability for both for me, the coach, and the client to say, we agree based on our written agreement that we're going to at least meet X amount of times. But then as we continue to look at our pacing, then I ask the question, so would you like to continue? Is there other things you want to explore? Are we there yet? And the client will either say, yes, no, let's keep going. So it really just depends.
Yeah. And do you have clients sometimes that maybe you spend 5, 6, 8 weeks with them, and then, a year later they come back and they have something else they want to work on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
yes.
doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
Yes. So, example, I have some clients who are I will call my themed clients. They're leaders of organizations. They're highly I say competitive, but achievement oriented, and they want to work on their next thing. What we ended up talking about is their health and wellness. And so when we kind of walk through that at their pace, then they said, oh, okay, well, now I want to talk about my next steps in terms of my career. So it just really depends on where folks are.
Yeah.
And we want to just make sure, and I want to make sure that our pacing is a mutual agreement and making sure that we stay within the partnership. And my job also is to bring people back to themselves. Right. So when we start talking, Holly starts to talk about things around with other people, and I'll say, well, that's great, Holly, but how do we focus on you?
Right.
What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I have learned so much about coaching, and maybe I need to call you. I'm not sure. I'll have to think about.
I am open, and just let me know.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. Oftentimes when we get to this part of the show, I ask the guests to tell people how they can learn more. Is there some way that folks can contact you if they're interested in learning more?
Sure. My day job and what I do, and as it relates to Crossnore, you can always send me an email at awoods@crossnore.org, and we can go from there.
Yeah. Great. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being with us today and teaching us more about coaching. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Friends, as I have thanked Angela for being with us today, let me also say thank you to each of you who are watching or listening. We appreciate the opportunity to share with you about Crossnore and even about our staff and other ventures that they're involved in. For more information, please visit our website at crossnore.org or follow us on our social media channels at Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. For now, that is all for today, but I hope you will join us again next week right here on The Way Home.